and they typically will be a man and a woman, and the man is quite traditionally masculine presenting and, quite fit and typically very handsome, and the woman is very slim, typically very feminine looking, wearing a certain kind of outfit, and
Don't ask someone to dance. I see them and I think, okay, I'm not going to ask that person.
Any space will benefit from different voices and different perspectives. I think when you sit in that discomfort and you really acknowledge it, you can better address those sort of situations.
Natalie Walls is an experienced social dancer, a bachata and Latin commercial teacher, and is also a certified role rotation instructor as well. As part of her role as a teacher and member of the dance community, Natalie focuses her work on creating inclusive spaces where all dancers are welcomed, accepted, and celebrated. Natalie, I'm really excited to welcome you to the Empowered Dancers podcast. Hello.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
It's great to have you joining us today. So, Natalie, where did it all start for you? What led you into dance?
So I've danced, I think, in some way since I was very, very small, doing sort of classic tap ballroom, that sort of thing when I was little and into school. But in terms of social dancing, it's actually because of my mum. So she was a dancer through my teenage years, and she was also what is called in that style a taxi dancer. I think they have it in some of the Latin styles as well, where she would
Mm-hmm.
help out with the beginners and sort of welcome them and go over the moves when the intermediate dancers were doing their dancing and things. So she'd been doing that for a while. So I was dancing with her in the house when she was practicing and that sort of thing. But the classes were in a licensed venue, so I had to be 17 before I could go dancing with my mum. Well, 18 really, but we got away with 17.
Yeah.
Yeah, semantics. So yeah, when
Indeed.
I was about 17, I just went along with my mum just for something to do with my mum. I'd always liked dancing and partner dancing. So yeah, we just did that once a week together, and then at some point I started to compete. This wasn't bachata or salsa. This was modern jive. I did a bit of sort of traditional swing dancing.
Mhm.
I've dabbled in West Coast swing, did blues, sort of commercial jive, that sort of thing. So social
Okay.
dances, but not really Latin. Yeah, and I competed in that and danced that for many years. I started if I was 17, 15, 16 years ago, maths.
Uh-huh.
That's not quite right, is it? 14 years ago. 14 years. So yeah, I did that for a long time and I had dabbled in bachata, just having gone to sort of Latin clubs and meeting people who did it and then doing a couple of classes. But I didn't properly start committing and training in bachata until the very beginning of 2019,
Mm.
where I started dancing in Edinburgh, and trained with the teachers there, but also with Tiago Degas, who was doing his residency when I started, which was very lucky. So he sort of took me under his wing, and helped me with not only the dancing, but also the sort of mentality and his mindset and the way that he teaches. So I was
Mm-hmm.
very lucky to have met him at that crucial moment where I had started and come from other dances where I was very experienced into being essentially a beginner again. So
Mm.
yeah, that was
Yes.
great.
Yeah. When we go into something new, so you sidestepping into bachata, it is totally new. And those early teachers we have, they form the impression for us of what to expect and how we should behave and how everything is in the whole scene.
Yeah, definitely. I think the teachers that you have, especially in those sort of early early months of your dancing, can really set the tone. I mean, I think if you come from a different social dance, you're maybe a little bit more aware of it. And if you have a bad teacher, you would probably be more likely to be a bit switched on and maybe go somewhere else. But if you're an absolute beginner, I think, you've never danced before, you're putting yourself in a very vulnerable position and you might feel a little bit scared. And I think the responsibility of your teachers when you're a beginner is really, really high. And I was just incredibly lucky with the teachers that I had.
That's very lucky indeed. Very cool. And now we are going to get into some problems in the scene. And there's a lot of space for growth and potential improvements that we will be seeing and are seeing as the years go on. But there's also some wonderful growth to celebrate as well in Latin dancing. What is something for you that is at the heart of why you love dancing?
Oh, why I love dancing. Oh my goodness, could be a whole 8 episodes of one podcast on its own. I love dancing for so many reasons. But I think particularly social dancing, it's really important for me as I think what could be fairly described as an overthinker. I'm
Mm,
quite sort of anxious. I get very in my head. I'm a bit of sort of perfectionist with my day job and all of that sort of thing. And I think that social dancing really lends itself to getting you out of your own head, even just for a couple of hours, because you can't be thinking about 100 things if you're dancing because you have to be connected with yourself, with the music, with your partner, and it really sort of pulls you into the present, into the moment. And I think that
yeah.
relief from having 1,000 thoughts running through your head, for me, I think is so valuable. And I think that's why I love social dancing. I love dancing in general. For I think it sort of floods your brains with good chemicals and makes you feel very happy and confident as a way of expressing yourself. But I think social dancing has that edge for me because it really pulls you into the present with the person that you're dancing with.
Mm,
And I think with the scene, particularly with bachata, I mean it's completely global. It doesn't really matter where you are in the world. You can find people dancing bachata, and I think that that's so special. So I'm lucky enough to travel occasionally with work, and I do a lot
mhm.
of solo traveling and that sort of thing. And I think there's something lovely about going somewhere and just looking up where there is going to be a dance event or dance class and just
Yes.
going along and you don't know anyone and you maybe don't speak the same language and you've never been there before and you don't know anything. And in that sense, you're kind of alone on your trip. But for a couple of hours, you can just connect with the people there and feel part of that sort of global dance community, which I think is really special.
Mm. Yeah, that is beautiful. That variation of feeling and culture is wonderful between countries.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. And I think that being able to walk into a room and know that you can connect with someone who you know absolutely nothing about them. And yeah, I think that's I think that's quite rare. I don't know that there's many hobbies that has that same sort of global community. A lot of them you would need to be able to at least maybe communicate verbally with someone to go
Mm.
and partake somewhere else. And you don't
Yeah,
really need that with bachata, which is very
it's pretty
and the other
special.
dances. It's very special, yeah.
It is, yes. In bachata, we do still have a traditional way of doing things. We have there's quite still quite a few norms that are present in the scene. So let's unpick these norms a little bit and start with what you described earlier before we started recording as a cookie cutter formula, which I thought was quite a rounded up way of talking about what we see in lineups. Could you talk us through first what is the typical look of a pair of bachata teachers in our current climate?
Yeah, of course. So this is something that I think about a lot. It's quite a inclusion and diversity and representation is quite a key part of my day job as well. So I'm always thinking about it in some sense about widening participation and bringing people into spaces that they aren't really represented. So it's a
Mhm.
big part of how I do not just dancing, but most of my work. Um, and I think that when you look at a lineup for an event in Bachata, and I think it's better now than it has been in the past, which is great. And I think we'll probably talk a little bit more about that. But generally speaking, the artists and the couples that are teaching, they fit a certain demographic, and they typically will be a man and a woman, and the man is quite traditionally masculine presenting and, quite fit and typically very handsome, and the woman is very slim, typically very feminine looking, wearing a certain kind of outfit, and, it's very a very typical look. And
Yeah.
just I want to make it 120% clear, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that that's beautiful and worth all the hype. Some of these artists are supremely talented and really deserve all of the hype and all of the praise that they get.
Yes, indeed.
But I think that there's just room in these lineups for people who don't quite fit that stereotype, who,
Yeah.
have a different body type, a different background, who maybe don't fit your typical like understandings of like traditional gender roles. Maybe it's two men, two women, people of all sorts of genders or different dynamics in the couples.
Yeah, well, bachata is a very it's a huge and ever growing, still growing scene. It's not about replacing people, of course. That's not what we're trying to talk about here at all. It's just opening it up even more. Who else can we bring into these lineups? Because as you say, so many of the teachers that are out there deserve all of the praise and space they get because they're fantastic. They know their craft so well. But that doesn't mean that someone else also doesn't know their craft but doesn't fit that image. And there's space for both of those.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's just about bringing more people into the space, not the same number of people and replacing people with other people.
Of course.
That's not a benefit to anyone. But there are dancers within the scene who are incredible, who don't fit that typical maybe aesthetic.
Mm,
And there's so many anecdotes that I've heard personally or that people have spoken about publicly, where they feel like if they don't fit that aesthetic, they don't get the same opportunities or respect, or maybe they're just simply not asked to dance if they go to a new place, or
yeah,
and I think that that's a real shame and does a real disservice
it
to
is.
the dance scene.
How do you think that is to the dance scene's detriment? How are we
Well, I think
limiting our social dancers?
yeah, I mean, I think that, any space will benefit from different voices and different perspectives. In dancing, it's, different styles, maybe different interpretations of the dance. There's very few cases where diversity is not, beneficial to whatever scene or room or space that it's brought into.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that, dancing is it. I truly believe that it is for everyone and that everyone can dance.
Yeah.
Um, some people are naturally gifted, that's a whole other thing. But in terms of social dancing, I think that, it can bring some of those benefits that, that we talked about earlier of community and connection and empowerment and that sort of thing. I think that those could be so beneficial to so many people. And I think it would be a shame if people feel like, dancing's not for them because they don't see themselves in any
Yeah.
of the, I don't know, it's something as simple as the event posters.
Well, the posters, yes. So if we think of someone who's curious about bachata, they've heard about it and they look up, they see a poster for an event, or they look at a couple's Instagram, for example, anything like this, and they see beautiful, strong men. I mean, beautiful, I mean in stereotypical way, the kind of the Hollywoods way, let's say. So
Yeah,
a Hollywood standard of beauty man, a Hollywood standard of beauty woman, the style of dress that goes with that, with more skimpier outfits for the women typically. If that doesn't resonate with you, that might be the end of your bachata exploration. You could just walk away at that point. But that's not all there is. There is so much more to it. Teachers, they have the responsibility of representing in the scene. And the more we can represent, you're right. What's the negative if we can show more people, hey, this could be for you too if you want to try it?
absolutely. Yeah. And I think there's different ways to do that. I mean, as teachers, we can only embody what we are. We can't represent everyone. We are just ourselves.
Of course
But
not.
what we can do is platform other types of people and be very mindful and intentional with our marketing, with the people that we invite to do guest spots, with the people the artists that we bring to our events, the the people who we put in our promo videos from the class. We can be really aware of showing a diversity of students and not just showing and diversity of teachers and artists and not just showing one type of person. And in many cases, unintentionally reinforcing the stereotype. I don't think many people are
Mhm.
doing it intentionally, but I think in order to make a change in many of these cases, you do have to be intentional and be really mindful of what you're putting into, particularly things like social media and event posters and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yes, because they do have an impact. They
Absolutely,
do.
yeah. I mean, just simply, I mean, my mum, as I said, is a dancer. She's not a bachata dancer, but she's a dancer and a very good one. But the number of times that she said that she wouldn't want to come to bachata because she's too old. She doesn't think that, it's for her.
Hmm.
Um, and I mean, I've got to take a bit of responsibility for that because presumably the most bachata content she sees and consumes was put in the world by me. So
Hmm.
it makes me think. And recently she did come along to a class, and she had an absolute blast, and she was very good at it. So
Wonderful.
yeah, I think we just need to be really mindful because even with we're gonna make mistakes and reinforce these stereotypes accidentally. And I think we've all got a responsibility to go out of our way to really make sure that everyone does feel welcome even before they walk through the door, even down to the marketing and the promotion.
Mm. Yes, there's loads in that to be aware and to think about. And then on the flip side, what do you think that students and social dancers can do for the scene? Because we have teachers, they are the gateway as such, but once you've walked through the door because you've seen a teacher or an event's promotion, now you're surrounded mostly by fellow students and social dancers. So, what kind of responsibility can we take on as social dancers to also be a part of this change? It's not all on teachers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think sort of fundamentally, I think everyone has the responsibility to sort of challenge our preconceptions about people.
Mm,
So when you're in a room, and this will happen to everyone, no matter how, aware of these issues that you think that you are, you will make snap judgments about people. Our brains are wired that way.
yeah.
But then what you then have the responsibility to do is challenge it and acknowledge it and not just let that, preconception be your idea of that person and just think, well, what about them made me think that? And the more you challenge it in your own mind, the less you're going to make those snap judgments in the future. So I think it's important for us to acknowledge our own sort of unconscious bias and
Mm,
really be aware of it, and make an effort to change our mindset in that sense. But I think sort of practically as well, I think there's a lot of power in really supporting artists and organizers and teachers that you think are doing good work in this space. So most people who dance at least dabble in social media, if not, you know, spend a lot of time on it, like many of us do. Um,
yeah.
and I think, there are so many artists and social dancers and, people who are putting themselves out there to represent something slightly different than what is considered the norm. And something as simple as, like liking their videos and commenting and supporting them and sharing them and can really empower those people to continue to put what they're doing out into the world, which is already a huge plus. But it also means that that will show up on to more people and more people will see it. So the algorithm, you feed the beast of the algorithm and say, no, we love seeing these, different people showcasing their art. So continue to show me it and show it to other people.
Hmm.
And I think that is significant. It seems pretty frivolous, but I think it is very significant. And then on top of that, going to, supporting events by attending when you see that that organizer or the teachers or the artists are being really mindful about their event and they're hiring a diverse lineup of couples. They're using really inclusive language. They're really that's built into how they run their events, then, support it and shout about the fact that you're going and then go and then shout about the fact that it was amazing and encourage other people to go. Because the more, you say so much by where you go to dance, because there's so many places to dance that I think
Yes.
it's important that we make these decisions mindfully and go to the places where we think that they're doing good work, and
Yeah.
support them that way as well.
And hey, it's like we've been told since we were small, actions speak louder than words.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Let's go and take some action. Yeah,
Yeah.
lovely. Going back to that unconscious bias that some of us, or not some of us, that we all have different unconscious bias that are built up over years of learned behaviors, of experiences, and our brains taking in information that maybe we haven't consciously processed. So we're making these kind of snap judgments. Can you think of any way that we can learn to be aware? So if how do I know I've made a snap judgment about someone? When should I question? why I don't ask someone to dance. I see them and I think, okay, I'm not going to ask that person.
Yeah, I mean, I think about it. I think about it a lot. There's times where it's very obvious you made a snap judgment, and we've all, I think, all been guilty of coming off the dance floor and saying, "Oh, I was really surprised that dance was amazing," and then just sort of taking a second just to yourself, and just thinking, "Well, why am I surprised by that? Like, what made me make
Mm,
that assumption before I danced with that person that maybe it wasn't going to be amazing because there's going to be something." And I think we need to, it's uncomfortable to, really sit with your biases. Because, no one wants to feel like there's someone who makes these assumptions about people because it's not very nice. And you don't want to be someone who's, you know, whether intentional or not, being prejudiced or biased towards people. But we all do it. There are many reasons why, like your brain does make these judgments. But I think
yeah.
really sitting with the fact that maybe you did just make a very unfair judgment. And I think when you sit in that discomfort and you really acknowledge it, you can better address those sort of situations in the future, and you're much less likely to make those assumptions
Mm,
again.
yeah.
But yeah, I think we all need to be, when it comes to representation and diversity in general, I think we all need to be prepared to sometimes be a little bit uncomfortable with
Mm,
like facing up to what we've internalized and not realized.
yeah. And that's a great example. Thank you. So the next time, everyone, you're feeling surprised that a dance was so good, ask ourselves, why am I surprised? That's a great tangible feeling that we have all felt. I have felt it too. I'm sure you have as well, Natalie.
Yeah.
But to take that moment to go, okay, why? Why was I surprised? What bias was at play? That's a really great one. Thank you. And like these feeling uncomfortable sitting with these feelings, these biases, you're right, it's not fun, but how much more is that going to benefit our lives, not just in dancing, but beyond?
100%. Yeah, I think these things are, I think that dancing in many cases is just like a little micro universe and it reflects society as a whole.
I totally agree.
Um, yeah, and I think that, you know, when people say, they make diversity or representation or the language that we use and they sort of make out like it's really not that important and just making mountains out of molehills and that sort of thing. And it does really get under my skin because I just don't think that that's true. Because I think it's important within dancing in general, but just inherently, I think it's important. But I think it also, you carry that out into your life in the same way you carry the good things from dancing out into your life, that you feel more empowered and more connected with your body and that sort of thing. You will also carry the the lessons that you've learned in terms of, the biases that you carry and
Yeah,
the snap judgments that you make, you will carry that out into your main life. And I think that that can only be a good thing.
it
Just
really
in the
can.
wider society, I think we all need to be doing that in dancing and outside. Why are we making these snap judgments and sitting with our discomfort and really making sure that we're being mindful
Mm.
of how we're judging people and whether we should be.
Yes. Yeah, because that leads to a better experience for you, for the people you're dancing with, the people you're interacting with. It can change so much. And our scene has seen some wonderful changes over the years. Natalie, you've been dancing 14, 15 years going on. And then in bachata, the last 5 years, you've been in bachata during its kind of explosion phase as well. What kind of positive changes have you seen?
Yeah, I mean, I think even from when I started sort of properly diving into the bachata scene 5 years ago, I think it's changed so much already. And I think that much change in what is a relatively short period of time is incredible, and really galvanizing for people who are trying to make this change because, it's so, you can see it, if you go to the same event year after year, the difference in how people are interacting with each other is really obvious, and I think that that's incredible. I mean, when I first started dancing, gosh, 15 years ago or whatever, I remember that, for example, I was leading a friend of mine, and I wasn't very good at leading because in the classes I was a lady, so I went to the lady side and I did the lady bit. And I was 17, so I didn't really challenge. anything because I was 17. So I
Yeah.
was just trying to be very digestible for people. So I didn't want to make a scene. So yeah, I did that and that was fine. And then when I was trying to learn the lead of a movie, it wasn't even, we weren't even social dancing. We were just sort of figuring something out between us. And a very well known, very well respected at that time teacher, a guy, came up to me and said that I was too feminine to lead, so I shouldn't do it. And obviously, when a grown up, respected, talented guy comes up and says that to you, you go, okay, and you just drop it at that. And it made me feel a bit uncomfortable, but I didn't really give it that much thought, but I really internalized it. And I
Yeah.
still can't really lead the other styles of dancing that I do because I was told very early on that I shouldn't because I was too feminine, which,
And it's almost like they're trying to make it a backhanded compliment that you should want to be feminine. Therefore,
yeah,
you shouldn't.
don't lose your femininity, you know. Then what else will you have to contribute as a
Yeah.
17-year-old, a teenager, which is
Well,
insidious in and of itself. But
yeah.
yeah, so when I started dancing bachata properly, and obviously I was working with Tiago, and if people are familiar with Tiago's work with role rotation and with all the activism that he and now Felipe do, um, I wasn't going to get away with just following. He wasn't going to let me do that, even though I'd internalized this thing that I was too feminine to lead. That was absolutely not going to fly. So I learned to lead, and I think, really changing that mindset that I think is now present in the other styles of dance that I don't dance as much anymore. But just, the difference in the way that people approach that
Mm,
is, I think, very, very positive. I think it's m more so for women leading than for men following. Unfortunately, I think that's slightly behind in terms of how accepting
yeah.
people are of
It
that.
hasn't caught up as much.
No. So yeah, I think that's amazing. The other thing I think that is very, very tangible that has gotten much better is the language that people use around dancing.
Mm,
I think it still happens, but certainly, at least in the UK and in parts of, Spain where I dance quite often, um, people tend to use leader and follower more than they use men and women or
yes.
men and ladies.
It's always ladies
Um,
or girls. No one
so
says
always ladies, that's a whole other linguistic rabbit hole as to why we use men and not women.
yes.
But
We'll
yeah,
go. That's
men and
another
ladies.
day.
That's a whole other episode. But yeah, so I think that's something, and I think as teachers, I don't think that honestly, I don't think there's an excuse anymore. There were times, but between when I started and now, where I would be in the class and, I would be even teaching in past roles that I've had, where I would be leading and they would look at me and then refer to everyone leading as a man. Not only is that wrong, I'm teaching
Yeah.
and I'm not a man. So there was a bit of an adjustment phase where it was people seemed to be a little bit, reticent to make that
Yeah.
change. But I feel like I don't remember the last time I was in a partner work class where they didn't use leaders and followers, and I think that
That's
that's an
really good.
amazing growth. And I think it's
Yes.
really positive. Um, and yeah, I think just in general, when you look across a social dance floor now, I can only speak to where I dance, which
Certainly.
I guess will be quite skewed towards the kind of places I want to dance because of the mindset I have around dancing. But there's
Yes,
definitely
because your
more.
actions are speaking louder than your words. You're going where
Yeah,
you want to. Yeah.
I'm seeing the lineups of the types of artists that I really respect, and I think that they bring together such incredible social dancers as well for that same reason. So
Yeah.
the spaces that are created when you platform these people are just so special, and you look around the room and it's so accepting, and everyone's just being very authentically themselves and not all trying to present this like cookie cutter image of like I want everyone to identify me as someone who dances bachata.
Mm,
Rather than that, they're just bringing their whole selves, and I think it's really beautiful.
yes. Natalie, thank you so much for bringing Such an important conversation to the fore today for us. Talking about how we can change the image of bachata, the ways into it, and how to make it more inclusive for everyone, or even just accessible, that someone won't have a glance at a poster and think, okay, maybe not. But actually, no, I want to try this, and showing us ways that we can do this, not just from a top-down approach, but also as students, that we can think about where we're going, we can think about our actions in those places, and from both ends, improve the dancing, which is all anybody really wants. No one ever in the world of social dancing has said, I don't want this to be a good event. Never. So let's all keep working towards that beautiful goal. Thank you so much, Natalie Walls.
Thank you.